Hello students, welcome to BAJIRAO IAS Academy. So before going into the discussion of today's important news articles in the Hindu newspaper, let's discuss the yesterday's practice question for prelims examination. So the question is Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Nord Stream 2 pipeline connects which of the following countries? So the correct answer is Russia and Germany. Okay. So the explanation is this is 1200-kilometer pipeline that runs from Utsluga in Russia to Germany. So it is passing through the Baltic Sea in the northern Europe. So it carries 55 billion cubic meters of natural gas per year, and it was built in 2015. So this is very important question for prelims examination because recently there have been tensions between Russia and the West over the breakdown of the pipeline, the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Okay. So the practice question for today is Abraham Accord was signed between which of the following countries? The options are Israel, United Arab Emirates, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Option B, Israel, United Arab Emirates, United States of America. Option C, Israel, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain. Israel, United Arab Emirates, and Oman. Please comment the answer in the comment section. Okay, I'll give you the answer in tomorrow's session. This question is also very important with regard to normalization of tensions and volatility in the Middle Eastern region. So these are important news articles for today's discussion given in this Hindu newspaper. So the first news article is India, Malaysia move beyond dollar to settle trade in rupee. It is part of India's efforts to internationalize Indian rupee. The second news article is Can countries be sued over climate change? Climate change is a concern, particularly for poor and least developed countries. So, this is in the context of responsibilities of developed countries and developing countries to control the climate change. The next news article is No Idols, No Arms, the Pattanam Mystery. Patnam is a small town in Kerala where prehistoric excavations have been taking place. With regard to this Pattanam, we will understand the excavation and excavation site and what are its outcomes, significance. The next news article is Bandipur completes 50 years as Project Tiger Reserve. Project Tiger Reserve is an important initiative to conserve and protect tigers. Okay. Bandipur Tiger Reserve is located in Karnataka. On the eve of this Tiger Reserve completing 50 years, we will also understand what is Project Tiger and where it is located, where Bandipur Tiger Reserve is located. The next news article is Bison Hills, Kondareddy tribe facing cultural trauma. Kondareddy tribes are living in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. What is this cultural trauma and how they are facing the cultural shock? We will also understand today. The next news article is Food testing of Pashmina shawls will pose as a problem. Pashmina shawls, known in Ladakh and Jammu and Kashmir, how food testing faces a hurdle for the export of Pashmina shawls. We'll also understand this. These articles are very important for both prelims and mains point of view. So the first news article of today's discussion is India, Malaysia move beyond dollar to settle trade in rupee. So in this context, understand what is internationalization of rupee and how this trade will take place. This announcement, this announcement is seen as a decisive step towards de-dollarization. De-dollarization and internationalization of rupee is also seen an effort to safeguard Indian trade from impacts of Russian war in Ukraine. Russian war, especially after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, India has been looking for the opportunities and options to internationalize Indian rupee and at the same time de-dollarization of rupee. Okay. So subsequent fallout and sanctions, right? So already discussed, India and Malaysia have agreed to settle trade in Indian rupee. So this is information given by Ministry of External Affairs. Okay. So the announcement came out in the backdrop of so this is to safeguard Indian trade, right? This is to safeguard Indian trade from the impact of Ukraine crisis. So how to safeguard Indian trade is primarily after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, West imposed sanctions. Okay, the West imposed sanctions on Russia. So after West imposed sanctions on Russia, it became difficult for India to trade with Russia in dollars. So therefore, India has been exploring the opportunities to trade with most of the countries through the rupee. Okay, right. So the shift away from dollar, which has been a dominant reserve currency in the international trade, as we already know, in the international trade, US has a dominance, unchallenged dominance with respect to trade. For example, we import oil and natural gas, right? We import oil and natural gas from a Middle East. Okay, so even after importing, we have to pay in dollars for our imports. But if we internationalize our rupee, then no need to pay for our imports in dollars. So instead, we can pay in rupees as well. Okay. Now, the international trade so far has added a significance as it indicates India is willing to take concrete steps for the de-dollarization of international trade. So India has been taking significant steps for the de-dollarization of rupee. So Union Bank, so Union Bank of India. So just remember Union Bank of India. So this is the first Indian bank to operationalize the option by opening a special rupee Vostro account. So what is special rupee Vostro account? We will understand in the later part of this lecture. So, but Union Bank is the first bank to open special rupee Vostro account through a corresponding bank in Malaysia. So this will facilitate the transaction between these two countries in rupees. So this is a special rupee Vostro account. So special rupee Vostro account is very important for the examination point of view, especially for prelims. Okay, so trade between India and Malaysia can now be settled in Indian rupees. So dollars are not required to settle trade terms. For example, if we import some goods from Malaysia, we also export goods to Malaysia. So no need to pay in dollars for the trade. Instead, in rupees, the trade will be settled. Okay, and so this follows a decision by Reserve Bank of India in 2022, allow settlement in international rupee. Reserve Bank of India in 2022 allowed settlements in rupees itself. Okay. Now, this initiative of the RBI aimed at facilitating the growth of global trade. So this is aimed at facilitating global trade. For example, if only US dollar has a dominant position in the global trade. There may be crisis of dollar. If a country does not have enough dollar, then the country will not be able to import enough goods to sustain itself. But in case if a country is able to finance its imports through its own currency reserve, then definitely it would further promote the global growth, right? The transactions. So therefore, it is aimed at facilitating growth of global trade to support the interests of global trading community. Okay, so this supports the interests of global trading community in Indian rupee. Okay. So trading in US dollar has faced a growing difficulties. Why? US dollar faced a growing difficulties, particularly after Russia's economy was sanctioned by the West, right? So, when Russia attacked Ukraine with the term so-called military operation, okay, West imposed sanctions on Russia. So after sanctions, it becomes difficult to trade with Russia. But for India, energy is very important. When energy is very crucial because oil markets are very limited and oil markets are also very squeezed, especially after US imposing sanctions on Iran and Venezuela. So when oil markets are limited, India explore opportunities to import oil from other countries as well. But if US imposing sanctions on Russia makes it difficult for India to import oil, pay Russia in dollars. So therefore, India has been exploring the opportunities of payment in rupees itself. So this will enable internationalization of rupee also, so that we no longer dependent on dollars for our trade. Okay, so the fallout of sanctions and war making payments to Russia, US dollar become increasingly difficult. So payment to Russia after the war has increasingly become difficult, more and more difficult. Okay, so which in turn triggered a search for solutions. So when US imposed sanctions on Russia, other countries are searching for the other options for the payment, and that led to the de-dollarization worldwide. So you understood what is de-dollarization and internationalization of rupee as well. So we will discuss special rupee was to account in a later part of this lecture. Okay. Government told Rajya Sabha that 18 countries now accepting this international rupee payment. Uh, when we trade with these 18 countries, they accept rupee in settlement, and Malaysia is one such country among the 18 countries. And more countries joining this basket will make Indian trade more resilient and more sustainable also. We also we will also not dependent on uh, dollars for our trade. Okay. So this is for better trade. How this will lead to better trade? This mechanism will allow Indian and Malaysian traders to invoice trade in Indian rupee and therefore achieve better pricing of goods and services. Okay, both Indian and Malaysian traders will price goods in Indian rupee. So therefore, there will be a better trade, right? When a monopoly, a dominating position of dollar is removed from the markets, then it is a one way removing roadblocks, hurdles in the international trade because US dollars is increasingly associated with sanctions across the world. And in fact, the trade in regional currencies, local currencies, will in fact benefit countries. Okay, it benefits the countries. The mechanism is expected to also benefit traders on both sides because see, if payments are made in dollars, the transaction, the converting charges have to be paid by either importers or exporters. right? So this lead to a significant cost for exporters and importers. This will also be reduced. You can see here the currency spread conversion spreads could be further minimized. So if you look at the condition, the position of uh, India and Malaysia trade, the trade stands at 19.4 billion US dollars in 21 and 22, right? So this move will further improve the the trade opportunities, and the uh, the basket of goods within the trade will further increase, right? So it expected to help bilateral trade to overcome the currency related hurdles. Now, Malaysia is a third largest trading partner with India after Singapore and Indonesia. So India and Singapore bilateral trade stands at 30 billion US dollars, and Indonesia India bilateral trade stands at 26 billion US dollars, right? So this measure will definitely help India internationalize rupee. Internationalization of rupee means a greater say in the global markets for India. So in this backdrop, let's look into the Vastro account. Okay, what is a Vastro account? Understand. So first understand what is internationalization of rupee. So what are the pros and cons of internationalization of rupee? So the first uh, pros, the advantages of internationalization of rupee is, so foreign ease of foreign trade and capital flows. So foreign trade will be more eased, and capital flows will also be possible. For example, uh, if there is a greater fillip to trade, I mean, India has the potential to export more and more goods. That will definitely attract more and more capital inflows, right? And it mitigates exchange risks. If demand for dollar increases, that also increases the price of dollar, and that reduces the value of Indian currency. So therefore, it mitigates the exchange rate risks and reduce dependence on forex reserves. India will not be able to, uh, I mean, there is no need to maintain enough forex reserves with us. For example, in 1991, India faced a balance of payments crisis. We do not have enough dollars to pay for our exports. But if we internationalize our rupee, if we settle trade through our rupee, we will not be able to face such a situation in future. So what are the cons? So it complicates the monetary policy. Certainly, it will have impacts on the monetary policy, which is overseen by Reserve Bank of India Monetary Policy Committee. So exchange rate stability is also challenging and could bring unconditional capital flows. So it could bring unconditional capital flows that subsequently impacts economy. So these are some of the cons, but over a period of time, the proper regulation would ensure these cons will also be met. Okay, I mean, these cons will also be addressed, these disadvantages. Now understand what is a special rupee goes through account. So what is special rupee goes through account? For example, this is a foreign entity's holdings in the Indian bank are kept in a special rupee goes through account and are kept in Indian rupees. For example, if two countries have this mechanism, the foreign, the special rupee goes through account mechanism, then foreign country hold a bank account in the domestic uh, country. Okay, so if imports or exports are made, the currency, the local currency can be easily converted into the currency of the exporting country. See, it is given here. When an Indian importer wants to make a payment, for example, uh, India imports palm oil from Malaysia, right? So if Indian importer wants to make a payment for a foreign trader in rupees, the amount will be just credited into the Vostro account. So he can just credit the amount in the Vostro account opened in his country, so that the payment could be made with ease. And similar to this, if an Indian exporter, if India wanted to export anything to Malaysia and must receive payments in rupees. So of course he receive payments in rupees. So this Vostro account will be charged and money will be credited to the exporter's normal account. So this Vostro account will be a mediator between exporter and importer. So this convert the money. So this will further ease the transactions and settlement in the trade. So this is all about the internationalization of rupee, de-dollarization of world, and the special Vostro account. So in this context, just remember the special rupee Vostro account for the prelims perspective. This is very important. So special Vostro account is for internationalization of rupee, settlement of trade. So the next news article for today's discussion is, can countries be sued over climate change? We all know that climate change is a major problem now world has been facing. The low-lying island nations, they are gradually submerging because of rising sea levels. Increasing sea surface temperatures also lead to increased intensity of cyclones in different parts of the country. Even India is one of the most vulnerable and worst affected country because of cyclones, not just cyclones, also because of climate change. So now in this context, let's understand, can countries be sued over climate change? For example, there are different countries, for example, developed west and developing countries and least developing islands. For example, the developed countries are responsible for the climate change, the current climate change. But if their obligations are not met, can the developing countries and least developed countries can sue such countries? So this is a major question. So this is part of the climate justice, right? So in this context, let's just understand this. So on March 29, United Nations General Assembly, United Nations General Assembly, so asked an advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice on the issue. So the issue is towards a climate change resolution. So a climate change resolution was filed in the United Nations General Assembly. So based on the promises they have made in the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, right? This means that the opinion of the International Court of Justice is asked by the United Nations General Assembly, the legal advice on matter that, can countries be legally sued for not meeting their obligations. So the obligations under United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. This is very important for combating climate change, limiting global temperature below 2 degrees centigrade. So, so what made this resolution particularly important is that the resolution is passed by a small Pacific island nation, Vanuatu, right? So this Pacific island nation has presented this resolution. See, in Southern Pacific Ocean, there are number of islands, right? And they will face the consequences of climate change because of increasing sea levels and gradual submergence of such islands. And not just such islands. Recently, this Vanuatu nation state is affected with a cyclone called Palm. And this cyclone made that it wiped out 95% of its crops and affected two-thirds of its population. This is one of the worst cyclone in the history of Vanuatu. So this a cyclone, uh, you know, further uh, prompted Vanuatu to file such a resolution in United Nations General Assembly. Can the developed countries be sued over their obligations? So you can see in map the location of the Vanuatu island here. Okay, so it is in southern Pacific Ocean. So what does the resolution seek? So what is the objective of the resolution? So firstly, what are the obligations of states under international law to ensure protection of the climate system? So states have different obligations, right? For example, developed countries have a different obligation because they are historically responsible for climate change. And also, developing countries have a different responsibilities. For example, the intended nationally determined contributions. So this will deal with what are the legal consequences under these obligations for states. If states are unable to meet such obligations, what are the legal implications if they omit their responsibilities, if they are not met their obligations, what will be the legal consequences? And this resolution will deal with these aspects, right? And because the climate change is particularly a concern for small island developing states, right? Uh, in the southern Pacific Ocean, there are several Fiji, Tuvalu, Vanuatu, and the island of Guam, and also the Micronesia. So such islands have higher risk of submergence due to climate change. So therefore, they have filed this petition. So understand, so this resolution also refers to international protocols. So international protocols are also referred in this uh, resolution. So what are those? What are those protocols? One is Paris Agreement, and second, United Nations Convention on Law of Sea, and third is Universal Declaration of Human Rights. No doubt, if countries, the developing West, are not able to fulfill their obligations, then it also amounts to the human rights violation of people in poor and underdeveloped countries. So without a doubt. Okay. So this has been emphasized in the resolution, which was introduced by Vanuatu in United Nations General Assembly. Now, interestingly, what is India's position in this regard? I mean, India is also a developing country, and India is also one of the most vulnerable country for the impacts of climate change because of now it is uh, the second largest populous country. In case of any climate related disasters, India will face a higher problem of climate refugee and damage and destruction of the infrastructure. So therefore, India has been very cautious about this because uh, once one thing is that India is supporting efforts of small and least developed nations for climate justice. India is supporting their efforts. See, you can see climate justice and holding the developed world accountable for global warming. Of course, the developing world is accountable for global warming. Also, understand the developed world is responsible for climate uh, change, but their obligations in terms of technology transfer, financial assistance, their obligations are not met. They are not ready to share the responsibility. They are responsible for that responsibility of climate change. Okay, so the government is understood to have referred, I mean, this resolution is referred to the legal authorities in the country. So to understand the larger complications and legal implications if resolution is implemented. Okay. Now India is updated its nationally determined contributions. What is a nationally determined contributions? Uh, this is a part of country's contribution in preventing climate change. Uh, During Glasgow summit, our Prime Minister Narendra Modi have announced the five commitments, the Panchamrit commitments. They are net zero emission target by 2070 and 50 gigawatt energy from the non-renewable sources, 50% of our total energy from renewable sources, and reducing our emission intensity, right? So such measures are announced. So this is part of nationally determined contributions. India is committed and India is on path of achieving this nationally determined contributions, right? So no doubt about that. So here it is also highlighted India's commitment that sourcing half of its electricity from renewable sources by 2030. This is part of the Panchamrit promise, Panchamrit commitment. However, a significant that India did not join the overwhelming majority of countries. So India did not join this resolution, right? So the resolution introduced by the least developed countries and island nations, but India not joined to support this resolution. On the other hand, India's neighbors like Bangladesh, Maldives, Sri Lanka, Nepal have joined this resolution because they are part of Indian Ocean region and they will also face consequences of climate change. But now India has been watching how US, China respond to this resolution. Only then India will uh, take an appropriate action. uh, it will be hard to implement because if a support from if US and China does not support such a resolution, then it will be hard to implement this resolution. So therefore, India is also following the wait and watch approach with respect to this resolution. So during this discussion on the resolution, US representative uh, voiced concerns on launching judicial process. uh, I mean, she says that the judicial process would not be enough to achieve our climate goals. Collective action required from all the countries so that the climate targets will be met in a more uh, sustainable and efficient manner. So this is what is the response from US representative to UN. On the other hand, uh, Indian officials have also said that the ICJ process can only speak about climate change issues, problems broadly, but it cannot name a few countries. These countries are responsible. So, so there are complications and implications in the resolution itself. This is India's opinion on the resolution, right? So the pointing on the Paris Agreement as a landmark shift in the bottom-up approach. So what is bottom-up approach? As per the country's capabilities, every country is committed to decide their contributions in reducing the climate change. But if a bottom-up approach is followed, if a top-down approach is followed, then that will be difficult. For example, commitments are decided by the UN. Is a top-down approach that will place a significant implications on countries to achieve the climate targets. But on the other hand, the bottom-up approach is a more democratic and sustainable approach, and countries will also be able to fulfill their obligations. This is what India has been highlighting: the top-down approach and the bottom-up approach, right? And so, what do the sponsors of the resolution want? So, what is the objective of the resolution and what the sponsors of the obligation want, right? So, International Court of Justice is the highest body, highest court recognized by all 193 UN members. UN has 193 members, and International Court of Justice is recognized by all 193 UN members. So they wanted to bolster efforts to achieve this United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change that aimed at limiting global warming to 2 degrees Celsius by 2100. So if possible, 1.5 degree to 2 degrees centigrade Celsius, right? So while it gives to, International Court of Justice is entitled to give its opinion on the resolution as sought by the United Nations General Assembly. So what will be watched closely is uh, the climate reparations. Climate reparation is the developed countries are responsible for climate change now. Will they pay reparations for developing countries for what they are facing now? The climate, for example, cyclones and submergence of coastlines, infrastructure losses. So will the developed West is ready to give reparations, the climate reparations to the least developed countries, right? And the legal culpability for countries that don't achieve their NDC promises. Different countries have come up with different nationally determined contributions. So what will be the legal route if these countries not met their NDC promises, not achieved their NDC promises? Because the most vulnerable parts of the world, they are already suffering with lower levels of education, healthcare, lower financial capacities, and high levels of poverty, inequalities. Still, then they are also suffering with the evils of climate change, right? So, according to latest IPCC report, the global warming already reached 1.1 degree Celsius of pre-industrial levels. So therefore, significant cuts in emissions is required to, achieve the set target under the Paris Deal COP21st. Okay, this has been highlighted here. In fact, UN General Secretary General Antonio Guterres said that ICJ's opinion was essential. So the opinion of ICJ is essential. After the opinion of the ICJ, the necessary measures will be taken in this regard, right? So the UNGA route adopted by Vanuatu and its supporters also appears to have been more inclusive than so the I mean introducing such a resolution in the United Nations General Assembly, understanding other nation, uh, I mean, compelling other nations to understand the impacts faced by such a small and least developing nations is one step forward in achieving the climate goals, and it will be more inclusive because all countries will be on board. Uh, all 193 countries already recognized International Court of Justice. So therefore, all countries will be on board and will do something concrete to achieve our climate goals. So this is not important what sparked the idea for resolution. Um, Already known that this is a small island nation and it has been significantly impacted by the increasing global warming, climate change, increasing sea surface temperatures, and climate refugee crisis. So all these factors led to the Vanuatu introducing such a resolution, and even after introduction of such a resolution, almost 132 countries supported this resolution. Of course, India not supported this resolution, but almost 132 countries have extended their support to Vanuatu, understanding the complexity and the scale of climate change related events. So the next is advisory opinion of ICZ is binding on countries. Of course, it is not binding on countries. It is just an opinion being provided by the International Court of Justice to the General Assembly. Once the opinion is provided, then the General Assembly, with the consensus of all the members, will take a more uh, more effective decision, so that it will benefit all the countries, and it will in sync, it will be in compliance with the climate justice, right? Because all countries should act together to uh, curb climate change. So, loss and damages fund. This was agreed in COP27 summit recently held in Sharm el Sheikh, Egypt last year. So, loss and damage fund. And even though the advice is not binding on the United Nations General Assembly, but the advice has the necessary legal weight and moral authority. Okay, so because it is recognized by all the countries of United Nations, so therefore it will have a legal weight and moral authority on all the countries. So this is all about the resolution introduced by Vanuatu on making the the principle of climate justice to be effective and implementable, and the developed countries uh, should be hold the developed country should be accountable for the climate change, and they should extend the technical assistance, the technology, and necessary financial support to developing countries, including India, so that the climate change can be controlled and climate change will not increase beyond 2 degrees Celsius. So this is all about this resolution. Let's look into the another news article. Okay, the next news article is the Iron Age and Post Iron Age site in Kerala is unveiling a period of no caste or institutional creed. See, there are several historical sites: the Iron Age, Post Iron Age, Chalcolithic, prehistoric. So there are different places. For example, Atirampakkam in Tamil Nadu, Bimbetka. In the same way, a new Iron Age and post Iron Age site was unearthed in Kerala. Right, this is called as Pattanam. So uh, this unearthing excavation shed light into the no caste or institutional creed. But the people who live in these areas have close connect with the nature. So let's look into this article, what it says. So a village in Pattanam. The village name is Pattanam. It is important. I mean, you can get a question in UPSC that which of the following Iron Age, post Iron Age, village is recently found or shed light on non-institutional caste structure. Right? Just remember Pattanam. So this is a only multicultural archaeological site. This is only multicultural archaeological site in Indian subcontinent. So different cultures have been living together. Uh, uh, I mean, different ethnicity, languages, race. So that together called as a multicultural archaeological site. So, so often referred to as the first emporium of Indian Ocean. First emporium of Indian Ocean. So this is part of Mujiris. This is also very important. Tondi, Musiri, they are the prehistoric or ancient ports. Okay, they have facilitated trade between Greco-Romans and people who live in Indian subcontinent. So just remember the port Mujiris port. Okay, now this is this excavation, this multicultural archaeological site is part of Mujiris, right? name of this site is Pattanam. Okay, Pattanam is part of Mujris. So this is an example of Greco-Roman classical age coming into direct contact with ancient South Indian civilization. The Greco-Roman people have a direct contact with the ancient South Indian civilization. Along with the Sangam age, there's also a prevalence of uh, civilization in South India. So this is part of the another civilization. So excavations so far have unearthed just 1% of the site. So just 1% of the site uh, excavated so far. So, um, so, so far, what the researchers have found that there's no evidence of institutionalized religion. There's no source of institutionalized religion existing in ancient Pattanam. Okay, and also there's no indication of graded inequality embodied in the caste system. Caste system is now prevalent in or deeply entrenched in the Indian society, but the Pattanam civilization does not have any graded caste system or graded inequality, which is part of the caste system, and it does not have a traditional or institutionalized religion. So therefore, the founding of Pattanam, the unearthing of Pattanam is very important. So it is located in Kerala. The evidences, technological, metallurgical, literary, and artistic evidences of this phase bear witnesses to rigorous cultural and commercial exchanges. The cultural and commercial exchanges, that does mean that exchange of culture between different civilizations within this area, and commercial linkages, exchanging goods and trade between the Greeks, Romans, etc. So the Pattanam excavations have unearthed 45 lakh shreds, ceramic fragments, and 1.4 lakh belonging to littoral region of Mediterranean, River Nile, Red Sea, and Eastern Indian Oceans, and also South China Sea. See, this indicating the extent of the commercial and cultural linkages the people of Patnam have with different parts of the world. This include the South China Sea, the Nile River, the Mediterranean Sea, and eastern and western parts of the Indian Ocean. Different people have come here and have established the commercial and cultural linkages, right? Uh, these findings include the seal of uh, Sphinx, the native to the ancient Greek city, Thebes. So there is a seal also found in this region. The wide span of locations confirms the existence of a thriving urban center from 5th century BC till the 5th century AD. Okay, so the date of the time of the existence of this civilization from 5th century BC to the 5th century AD. So, but the peak phase of this civilization is 100 BC to 300 BC. So the Pattanam has not chosen to delight archaeologicals. So there were no idols found of gods, goddesses, or remnants of grandiose places of worship. Because earlier we have discussed that this place Pattanam does not have no evidence of institutional religion. So to confirming that this place does not have any idols of gods, goddesses, or the remains of grandiose places of worship. And also other significant finding from this place is that the Iron Age and post-Iron Age was also bereft with sophisticated weaponry, right? So this age does not have any sophisticated weaponry, and this This is in sharp contrast to some Pattanam contemporary sites such as uh, Berenaik in Egypt, Khor Rori in Oman. So these places have sophisticated weaponaries. Though these uh, ages are contemporary to the Pattanam civilization, they have sophisticated weapons, but Pattanam lack such a sophisticated weaponry. So therefore, this is a very significant finding in Tamil Nadu. So just remember Pattanam and what are its key findings and what are its commercial and cultural linkages with other parts of the world. So for the examination point of view, especially for the prelims point of view, this is very important. Okay. So the next news article is Bandipur completes 50 years as Project Tiger Reserve, traces legacy to Maharajas. This is important for the preliminary exam point of view. Bandipur National Park is located in Karnataka. It is also declared as a tiger reserve. Okay. Project Tiger, which was started in 1973. So this is also a tiger reserve, right? So let's just look into the article. So the Bandipur Tiger Reserve completed 50 years. Project uh, Tiger Reserve. So it was started in 1973, right? So the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi launched this flagship conservation program to arrest the dwindling population of tigers. If you look at the trend of UPSC prelims questions, there are questions like the nationalization of coal is done under the prime ministership of Indira Gandhi. In the same way, UPSC may ask questions like the project Tiger started under the prime ministership, under which prime minister? So, under the prime ministership of Indira Gandhi, the project Tiger started in 1973. This is to ensure that conservation of tigers takes place and arrest the dwindling population of tigers. So there were just 12 tigers when the project was started in Bandipur, right? But the rigorous conservation efforts undertaken led to the uh, 173 tigers. So the protection measures, the number of tigers utilizing the park is now 173 tigers are living in this park. So while the number of tigers within the reserve has been pegged at 126 for the as per the status of tiger co-predators and prey in India. This is a report which uh, have details of number of tigers in different tiger reserves across the country. Okay, and this is published by National Tiger Conservation Authority. So just remember, status of tigers, co-predators and prey in India report published by which of the following agencies? This is published by National Tiger Conservation Authority. Okay. So the Wildlife Conservation Act 1972, this is very, very important act for the examination point of view. UPSC asked questions on Wildlife Conservation Act several times. The Project Tiger is also part of the Wildlife Protection Act. So before the Wildlife Protection Act is actually passed, the rulers of Mysuru had realized the importance of conserving flora and fauna. So they have undertaken several measures for the conservation of flora and fauna in the Bandipur National Park before the Wildlife Protection Act or Project Tiger actually started. So look at the boundary extended from Moya River. Remember this river, Moya River. So which of the following river passes through the Bandipur Tiger Reserve? Such type of a questions you can see in UPSC. So the Moya River forming the southern border to the towards Nilgiris and northwards it stretched to Gundlupet, so High Imabad Gopalaswamy Betta. So, Betta is a mountain, a hill. They call hills as Betta in Karnataka, Kannada. So the park was named after the Venugopala, the deity of temple atop the hill. So just remember Project Tiger, Wildlife Protection Act, Bandipur Tiger Reserve, where it is located. So in this context, let's look into the Project Tiger, when the project actually started. The Project Tiger, a wildlife conservation movement, initiated in India in 1973. So the Project Tiger started in 1973. This is to protect tigers. Project Tiger, launched in 73-74, is one of the most successful conservation ventures of recent times, because India hosts a largest number of tigers in the world. Now India is home to a huge number of tigers. So the project aims at tiger conservation and specially constituted tiger reserves. So after Project Tiger, certain areas are designated as tiger reserves. So they are earmarked for the conservation of tigers. So in various biogeographical regions falling within India. So it strives to maintain a viable tiger population in the natural environment. Because for food chain, a food web, tiger population is very important, and also the biodiversity perspective also, tiger population is very important and very crucial. So it is said that Project Tiger is one of the most important conservation effort undertaken by the government of India. Okay, let's look into the another news article. So the next news article for discussion today is Bison Hills. Wedding bells fall silent as Kondareddy tribals face cultural trauma. Now, before going into the details of this article, let's just understand who are Kondareddy tribes, where they live, and what are their cultural practices. Okay. So Kondareddis are one of the most backward tribal groups in the state of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. So Kondareddis are also known for their primitive habitation. They are also isolated tribes. They are also categorized as particularly vulnerable tribal groups. So they are most backward tribal groups in the state of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, and they inhabit both on the banks of they inhabit on the banks of, so both side of the river Godavari. So they inhabit on the both sides of river Godavari. Okay. So they live in east and west Godavari districts of present day Andhra Pradesh. Okay. Uh, in UPSC, you may get the question that Kondareddis live in which of the following states. Like in 2021, also there was a question on Ho tribe. Ho tribe lives in which state? Right? They live in these areas, Khammam of Telangana and Srikakulam of Andhra Pradesh. So they live in the interior forest areas, largely cut off from the mainstream. Earlier, I have told you they are isolated tribes and they live in interior forest areas. Traditionally, they were shifting cultivators. There's a concept of shifting cultivation, uh, right? So they clear the forest and cultivate there, and after cultivation, so they shift to another place for the cultivation purpose, because they consider that um, the fertile soil will yield more productivity, more production. So they just clear the forest and go to the another place for the cultivation after the cultivation purpose. And most of the cultivation is for the subsistence, not for the commercial production. So traditionally, they are shifting cultivations. Recently, some of them have adopted settled agriculture also and horticulture also. So collection of non-timber forest products and basket making supplement the main source of livelihood. They make baskets and they sell such baskets, and they also collect non-timber forest produce like tendu leaves and collection of honey, tamarind, etc. are non-timber forest produce. So they collect such forest produce. So their mother tongue is Telugu language with a unique accent. They have a unique accent in their mother tongue. So Kondareddis have also been recognized as a primitive tribal group. Earlier, we have discussed they are particularly vulnerable tribal groups. Why I'm stressing on this question is there's a question on the tribals in UPSC and also particularly vulnerable tribal groups. So tribals are very important for the UPSC examination point of view. So they are particularly vulnerable tribal groups. So now we have discussed about the particularly vulnerable tribal groups. Let's just come into the article. So what it says, this news article. So the Kondareddy tribals face the cultural trauma. Remember in Andhra Pradesh, the Polavaram project is being constructed on River Godavari. The Polavaram project is on River Godavari. So, because of construction of the Polavaram project, there has been a widespread submergence of the areas on the banks of Godavari. Earlier, we have discussed that Kondareddy people are living on the banks of both sides, the banks of River Godavari. So, therefore, if the areas they are traditionally living are being submerged under the Polavaram project, they have to be resettled, rehabilitated, and relocated. So if they are rehabilitated, then they may get displaced from the areas where they have a traditional attachment, right? For example, in Kondareddis, they generally organize their marriages on the banks of River Godavari. In this, you can see, in this image, you can see a Kondareddy habitation to be rehabilitated for the Polavaram irrigation project in Allur Sitaramraju district. So this Allur Sitaramraju district is in Andhra Pradesh now. So, a marriage ritual associated with River Godavari. While they conduct marriage, because you see, tribal people have a special traditions, special customs. They have a special social relationships. So if they are displaced, if they are rehabilitated somewhere, they miss their traditional rituals generally associated with River Godavari. So this has been highlighted in this article. This is a cultural shock and cultural trauma for them, right? So in this context, we just understand two more weddings in the village are almost finalized. So two most weddings are also finalized, but dates are yet to be scheduled in the village. So they generally sit on the banks of Godavari in the Bison Hill Range, locally known as Papi Hills. So this is a Papi Hill Range. See, this hill range is also called as Papikondalu Hill Range and also referred as Bison Hill Range. So they generally sit on the banks of River Godavari while they conduct marriage because they are very closely associated with Godavari. You can see in this map how close their habitations are with River Godavari. So this is one of the villages that is said to be rehabilitated before the monsoon sets in. So as part of the resettlement and rehabilitation exercise of the Polavaram irrigation project. So we are in cultural shock as the government told us to be prepared to displace before the next monsoon arrives. The government said that uh, uh, we are making arrangements to displace you before the next monsoon arrives because um, it is an area which will be submerged under the Polvaram project uh, after construction. So the rehabilitation to a new settlement itself, a cultural shock to the tribal community. So here they are saying that our bond with River Godavari is set to come to an end soon because once they are rehabilitated, they bond with River Godavari will, and this is what they are highlighting. we do not have any idea how to conduct our tribal rituals in the absence of river. So this is the concern they have been raising. From birth, wedding to death, every ritual begins with holy dip in Godavari River. Okay, from for some rituals, soil and sand are brought from the banks of river and offered to our local deities. Commence the agricultural activities. So, uh, the kind of importance they are giving for River Godavari, they associated everything with from their birth to death to River Godavari. So it is little difficult on their part to resettle somewhere else from the River Godavari. But the government has been taking up all the measures to displace from this area. So this is what this article is about. Remember the Godavari River, the Papikondalu Hills, and the Kondareddy tribe. They are particularly vulnerable tribal groups, and which state they belong to. So this is all about this article. Okay, the next news article for discussion today is poor testing of Pashmina shawls still poses a problem. See, the Pashmina shawls, for the examination point of view, is very important. Pashmina shawls are primarily made from the Pashmina goat, right? So Pashmina goat. So they are cultivated commercially in Ladakh and Jammu and Kashmir region. See, this is a Pashmina goat. The wool is used. This wool is used for making pashmina shawls. In international market also, this pashmina shawl have a huge demand. So therefore, I mean, this is a source of livelihood for people who are living in Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh regions. So why poor testing of pashmina shawls still poses a problem? It is because uh, the pashmina shawls are made with wool. Uh, I mean, the wool is uh, brought from the Pashmina goat. But there is another animal. So that animal is Tibetan antelope. You can see here, this is Tibetan antelope or chiru. This is called as. This is a highly protected animal under Wildlife Protection Act 1972. So this is highly protected animal. But what happening is the wool of this pashmina goat is often mixed with this antelope wool. Since this is a highly protected animal, uh, generally when the customs agencies conducting the microscopic tests, they often found the wool of this chiru, the Tibetan antelope. So because of the export related ban on the products derived from this animal, they are generally rejected. They face problems in exporting. Uh, uh, I mean, exporting, not just exporting, even the confiscation of these pashmina shawls made by the traditional handicraftsmen. Okay. So this article has been highlighting how the traditional Pashmina handicraft uh, making industries have been facing difficulties because of the outdated testing methods. Because the customs union have been using the microscopic testing, and uh, it is very often turned out to be an error, and it is also finding the uh, other wool, the shatush wool, Tibetan, the wool which is brought from the Tibetan antelope is shatush wool. So the microscopic testing giving negative results, saying that this wool also contains the shatush tool. So this led to the complications for the export. and for the trading purposes as well. So what the traders are demanding, that they should be DNA testing centers, so that there will be a more accuracy uh, in testing the pashmina shawls, so that the traders will not face any difficulties, because they are highlighting that it provides livelihood opportunities for a lot of people in Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh region. And if the government confiscating the pashmina shawls, and even CBI riding uh, the industries which are making pashmina shawls, um, uh, so this kind of an disincentivizes the industry. So therefore, it is important, it is the responsibility of the government to establish DNA testing centers, so that more accurate testing of these pashmina shawls will be possible, and the export controls will be further uh, uh, liberalized, and it provides more and more livelihood opportunities for the people in Jammu and Kashmir. This has been highlighted here, right? For example, if a consignment found with the Shatush wool, then the consignment will be confiscated, will not be given back, and legal actions will be taken against the individual who is trading, illegally trading the Shatush shal. Here it is given about Shatush ban. The manufacturing of Shatush shawls was stopped in Kashmir since the ban imposed in 2002. So even remember, Shatush shawls also have a huge demand in the international market, but Shatush shawls were banned in 2002 in Jammu and Kashmir. The move came after Chiru population. This is Chiru. You have seen the image of Chiru before. So Chiru population showed a downward spiral in 1980s. Since 1980s, Chiru population have seen a downward, population trend. So Wildlife Trust of India put a number of Chiru population. So in 2013, in 2003, the Chiru population is around 500 to 200. So this lives in Himalayan deserts of Ladakh. This is also important for the exam point of view. The Chiru population, or the Chiru usually found in which of the following states? There are questions like the Barasinga found in which national park or which state. So such questions earlier asked by UPSC, right? So traders are aware that shawls with shatush fiber would be confiscated. So if the government find that there are any shawls with shatush wool, will be confiscated, and legal action will be initiated against such traders. Even then, also there has been an illegal trade of shatush shawls. So if a shatush shawl trade is permitted, then that will have a significant implications on the wild populations of Chiru. So therefore, it was banned in 2002. So there are a few possibilities of mixing of Pashmina shal with Shatush shal, because the farmers, while extracting the wool, it is, I mean, mistakenly mixed the the Shatush wool is mistakenly mixed into it. So therefore, while doing a microscopic test, the Shatush wool also found in uh, these uh, uh, handicraft products. Right? These have been given. So you just remember for the examination point of view, Shatush shawls found in which state? This is important. Jammu and Kashmir, and Pashmina goat, and also the Chiru, the Tibetan antelope lives in which area? Shatush shawls is also important. Just remember these aspects for the prelims point of view. Okay. So this is all for today's discussion, and thank you so much.